Presided over a meeting in orange headgear and wearing an oversized diaper. He says computer programmers are modern day magicians. The title of his speech is The Miracle of an Apology. He's our first speaker and our resident monk, Christian Minson.
When I was telling a woman friend of mine that I wanted to give a speech on apologies, she fell on her knees, wrapped her arms around my legs, and said, "Will you marry me?" I said, "What's that all about?" She said, "Do you realize how many men don't even know what an apology is, and you want to give a whole speech on the subject?" Well, it was then and there that I realized I had tapped into a miracle. And what's even better is that this miracle can be used by anybody, regardless of gender, regardless of the relationship. Between husband and wife, girlfriend and boyfriend, mother and daughter, co-workers, as long as they use this simple three-step process to an effective apology. I call it the miracle formula. Number one, I'm sorry. It was my fault. What can I do to make it better? I want to say that these 3 points came from a speech given by Professor Randy Pausch, but I'd like to elaborate on them in a little bit more detail. So number one, I'm sorry. This is all about the other person. You're essentially saying, despite what's happened, I still respect you and your feelings. Now, the important thing to remember is you've got to be sincere. If you're not sincere, the other person, internal radar, is going to pick it up and they're going to give you the boot. The other thing is that I'm sorry, there's really a little bit more to it. I'm sorry for ... is how I'd like to put it. And this can best be expressed when working with children. I have the privilege to hang out with a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. And the newly found independence of the 5-year-old sometimes finds her slugging her sister. If this happens around me, I take her aside and I say, now what are you going to say to your sister? She kind of looks up at me and says, "I'm sorry?" As if to say, "Can I go and play now?" I say, "That's very good, but what are you sorry for?" And then you say, "Oh, she's got to think." The little cogs are turning in her head. She goes, "I'm sorry because I hit my sister." I say, "Yes. And you're sorry because you're sorry that you hit your sister because," she thinks again, "because I hurt her." And you see a little light bulb go off. And you say, "Very good, very good." Send her off to play then. The point is, I'm sorry for an action. I'm sorry for hitting my sister because it caused a negative result. I hurt her. So when you're expressing I'm sorry, you want to express the action and the negative consequence. Now most people end here. However, if you want to squeeze the most juice out of the miracle formula, you need to move on to the second step. It was my fault. Now this is all about you. This is about you owning your stuff, basically. Saying, I take personal responsibility for this action and the result that we've just identified. The interesting thing is this part can be used even if you don't feel that you're at fault. And to give you an example, when I was a monk, I was on the movie committee. I brought a couple titles to my supervisor to approve or disapprove. And he looked at them and he said, "What is this? This stuff is crap. There's nothing about spirituality in these. You're wasting my time. Get out of my office." He was sort of really angry, and I went out of the office with my tail between my legs and kind of really fuming. And I said, "I don't deserve this. He really owes me an apology." I spent all day ruminating over this until I realized this is doing me no good. I've got to do something about it. So in my meditation that night, I realized that I need to apologize to him. So I had to dig deep for something that I could bring back to the table. The next day I went to him, I said, you know, I really apologize for not showing enough pre-discrimination in choosing the titles. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. You know, sit down. I really want to apologize to you because I was a little bit over angry. You didn't deserve it. You're doing a great job. I thought to myself, how interesting. My apology elicited from him the response that I initially had wanted. So we have, I'm sorry, it was my fault. But the real icing on the cake is the third step. What can I do to make it better? This is all about action. Action is the living proof of your words. That proof is so important that I suggest if the other person kind of blows off this part of your request, that you politely insist that they give you something to work with. Whether it's just a hug or an I love you or taking them out to dinner or something. The action is vitally important for creating a sense of closure. Sort of encapsulate the experience with a positive end so that it can be set aside and you can move forward in the relationship. In fact, if you find yourself in a relationship where people continually bring up the same stuff over and over again, I would suggest looking at that this third part may not be addressed. What can I do to make it better? What can I do to show you that I respect you? Because in the end, all our relationships are about an ongoing process of showing deeper and deeper respect for each other. So the next time you find in your relationship hits a pothole, I invite you to try the miracle formula. I'm sorry, what can I do to make it better? Or I'm sorry, it's my fault, what can I do to make it better? When you see this begin to work in your life to restore and repair your relationships, and not only that, but to help them thrive and grow, you will have experienced the miracle of an apology.